Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Animal Talk Thursdays. I'm Dawn Heyman, animal communicator and co-founder of Spring Farm Cares, and we're coming to you live from one of our animal rooms here at Spring Farm. And I don't know who's in the picture here, but up above me, well, she left, right? Was Mia and Bella.
She's still in the picture.
Okay, so Mia is up above me, and Bella keeps flopping over here on my lap, so she'll be here. We'd love to know more about where you are, so if you could shoot us a comment and just let us know where you're watching from. Don't say things like from work or whatever, just like what state you're in or where you are. A lot of you are local, but we have viewers from all around the world, actually. So it'd be great to hear from you and see where you're all tuning in from. And this is Bella down here. So today we have Becca again behind the camera. You can't see her, but you'll hear her. And she is going to be asking questions. She's going to be asking questions that some of you wrote in the comments from last week, and we'll pick up from there.
Okay, so one of the awesome questions we got last week was, how do you initiate a conversation with an animal who does not trust humans?
That's and I'm asked this question a lot. It depends on the animal. Any communication depends on the animal, just like any communication depends on the kind of person that you're trying to talk to. So with animals that don't trust people, and a lot of them that don't trust people have good reasons why they don't trust people, you just need to go really slow and stay on their terms. So remember, when you're trying to communicate with an animal, you don't have to physically be right next to them or touching them. So if they need space, give them space. Sometimes when we have animals brought in here that are very leery of people, like what's happening, they usually start to let that go here fairly quickly. When I say fairly quickly, it could be a few weeks, but and again, that's a broad generalization. That's not true necessarily for feral cats. We've had some cats that were injured, injured on the side of the road, almost unconscious or unconscious, that we didn't know anything about them, and we got them here in an emergency, took care of them, and they lived, and then we found out, only to find out afterwards, that they were completely feral and didn't want to be handled. And one such cat that we had here named Abigail was one of my favorites. And it took 7 years after Abigail was here. All of a sudden, one day I walked in the room and she walked up to me and rubbed up against me and let me pet her. It was like, I don't know what happened, but 7 years later, it was like somebody's flipped a switch, and she just all of a sudden was like, hey, I'm about this now. And she became a lap cat and very people friendly. And so you just don't know. But the thing we do here, the policy we have is ironclad, is that we give them their space that they need. We don't put our expectations of what they should be onto them. So how to communicate to them is give them their space, respect them, and don't push yourself at them. Because a lot of the reasons why people get really obsessed with this is they want to make the animal friendly. I'm going to make this animal want to sit in my lap. And they may not want to do that. And they may not ever do that. But again, we've had cats that were born in the wild here. I've had them I had one in my own house that literally was 9 years old. I had her since she was a little kitten. And she used to sleep on me at night. I slept on my back, and I'd feel something crawl up on my chest. And as long as I didn't open my eyes, she'd lay on top of me and she'd purr. And I had 5 cats, but I could always tell which one was her. She was the smaller of them. And she'd purr and purr and purr. And I could even touch her. But if I opened my eyes, she'd shoot off like a bullet. And I never saw her around the house. It was really weird. She hid all the time. And then all of a sudden, one day I was sitting reading, and she jumped up in my lap, curled up in a little ball, purring. And from then on, she was handleable. But she was like 9 years old when that happened. So you just don't, it's letting them do it on their terms and their time.
So yeah, I think a lot of the times, and feral cats are a good example. If you have a cat that doesn't appear to want anything to do with you, people think like, oh, that cat's not friendly, that cat hates me, whatever. But if there's a cat that doesn't want physical affection, does that necessarily mean that they wouldn't still enjoy the presence of a human?
That's a very good question. And that is absolutely true. Not all of them like to be petted. Some of them are born, and some of them are not feral. They're just born that way where that touch doesn't feel good to them. It's true with people too. There are people that just don't like to be, coddled or touched in certain ways or whatever. And where one person would find it enjoyable, another person finds it annoying. And tickling is a good example. But we get funny with animals because frequently, and if Bella would come back over here, I would demonstrate. Thank you, Bella. Frequently with cats, we tend to do this. And some cats absolutely hate that. And we have to be really it's live with animals. So we have to be really careful with how we pet them and what we like. We do that with dogs too. I have a lab that everybody comes up to and just rubs him up. And then we get piles of hair on the floor. He happens to like that. But I have other dogs. I had border collies that if you did that to them would be, horrified. That was just not their thing. So we really do have to honor where it is they're coming from and what their desires are.
Mm. And maybe we shouldn't be so quick to write a cat off as being totally unfriendly,
right.
Human hating just because they don't want pets.
Right.
The
sorrow is like going crazy here. Okay.
Okay. So another kind of related question is pertaining to rescue animals, whether it's in a shelter, a sanctuary, in a foster home, or if you recently adopted an animal that's rescued that's had some sort of difficult past. How can animal communication help us rehabilitate those kinds of animals?
So it can help in a lot of ways. It's very helpful because just like with people, sometimes animals just need somebody to listen to them. And sometimes they just need a friendly, compassionate ear. And there are other times they just need you not to push at them with what they have. Sometimes they just need to have space to heal on their own. And they all approach these things differently. They all approach traumas differently. We have a donkey right now named Murphy. I think he's a perfect example. Murphy, when he was born here. His mother came here pregnant, and he was born here, and his mother rejected him right away. She wouldn't let him nurse. So we worked with her, did a lot with our veterinarian, trying to get her to accept him, and she was done. She was like, no way. I should also mention that she was in her mid-30s. Nobody even expected her to be pregnant. And she had had enough. She was like, okay, I brought him into this world. You guys take it from here. And it was a very hard rejection for him. And we ended up getting another donkey when Murphy was just a couple months old. We got Noah. And Noah came in and was just this fabulous Uncle Noah. And we paired him up with Murphy. And Noah really raised Murphy. And just this summer, we lost Noah he was young, went upside down. He doesn't know anybody else. He doesn't have anything else. Then there was another donkey he really liked that was right next to him in a stall, Xander, and Xander died right after Noah did. And Xander was really old. But Murphy's world turned upside down. We got a new donkey that came in, Clarence, and tried to pair him up with Murphy. And we were all excited because Clarence was the same size as Noah. And it was like, this will be perfect. They'll be best friends and everything's going to be great. And we put him out and Murphy attacked Clarence really badly. Now Clarence, we've tried it multiple times now. We had to give up. Murphy wants nothing to do with it. But what I'm getting, this is with the animal communication perspective now, what I get from Murphy is he's angry. That's how he's expressing his grief. He's really angry. He's angry that his Uncle Noah left. He's angry that Xander left. He's angry that he's alone. And he doesn't have anybody else. Now, he has options here where he could have somebody else. But he doesn't socially know what to do. And we are trying to help him through that process. But right now, the best way we can help him is not by making him perform to our standards, not by making him accept who we think he should be with. Because no matter what we're doing, we're making it worse. I mean, he's getting, really nasty to other animals because of it. And that's actually not his personality. So we have to be careful as the humans in this situation not to push our expectations and the results that we want to see on him. We need to listen to him and go at his pace and figure out, it's easy to say, hey, he's being stubborn. There's some days now he's refusing to go outside because he goes out by himself. He can see others over the fence from him. but he's not comfortable doing that. So there's one school of thought that says, hey, you can't let him get away with that. You need to make him go out, and that's making him angrier. So we need to listen and adapt to them when we can, in the ways that we can. And that's what we're trying to do now.
Well, it's the same thing when a human goes through grief. It's a whole process. And so if someone's best friend died,
right,
you wouldn't be like, well, here's a new best friend.
Right,
and
exactly.
You know, not understand if they don't accept that immediately.
Right, because he needs to go through grief. That's a process, and he should be allowed to go through that process for however long that takes him. Now, it doesn't mean we abandon him in the process either. It's not just, oh, let him be, he'll come around eventually. That's not it. We need to say, how can we help him? And helping him is not making him conform to what we think it should look like. Helping him is understanding, what do you need now? Because his needs are going to change. And so we have to adapt to that, because right now he's angry, but he's also really depressed. I mean, it's just coming out, how he's expressing that is coming out different. So just like you say, a human in that situation, you wouldn't do all of those things. People try, though. If somebody loses their partner or friend, and suddenly, their best friend says, hey, I know what's right for you. We're going to go out for dinner tonight. Maybe that person doesn't want to go out for dinner tonight. They're not ready for that yet. So there's a fine line, though, about letting somebody hermit themselves to be alone in their depression. So you have to find that balance. The same is true with animals as well. And it's about listening to them and really trying to understand them. And if this cat falls on my head...
She keeps looking like she wants to
I know.
Oh, no, there she goes.
Okay.
That would be really interesting.
Yeah, right? Yeah, that would be fascinating.
Okay, that's so interesting. Another question, pivoting a little bit, that we got last week was from someone asking about intuitively picking up on a medical problem with an animal, and especially in the case where you might have several animals in your home and you have a sense like something is off with one of them, but you don't know which one it is necessarily. How do you go about determining that?
So this is a tough question, and it's not an easy question for me to answer, but I'll try to give you a short version of this. And this is something I would talk about more detail in a workshop, but we have to be careful. And I learned this when I started animal communicating. I would pick up all sorts of health things and medical things, and I remember going to my mentor and saying, how do the animals know all these things about their illnesses? How do they know? And that's when she took me aside and said, actually, they don't, but you're picking up something different. So we have to be careful, because we intuitively can pick up a lot of information in addition to what the animals are actually communicating with us. So animal communication, again, I have to go back to this basic principle, is somebody communicating and somebody listening. So somebody talking, somebody listening. It's an active form of communication. That's what telepathy is. Other knowing that, picking up that something is going wrong with an animal, or that there's something more wrong, or picking up specific things like, I think this animal has cancer, whatever. The animal most likely is not telling you that. You're picking up something is wrong, and your intuition is adding to that. And sometimes it's also, we embellish things as well with our own fear of what could be going on. So we have to be careful. Unless you're a veterinarian and getting information, you're not going to be diagnosing anything. I have people from years of work that I've done. I'll meet people to this day who'll say, oh, you diagnosed my horse's brain tumor. And I'm thinking, no, actually I didn't. Because what I probably, because I know I have never said, hey, your horse has a brain tumor. I'm not a veterinarian. I would not do that. But what I have said to them is, your horse is telling me he's having really bad headaches. You may want to get that checked out. And they go get it checked out and find out, ooh, there's a tumor there, whatever. And then, suddenly I get accredited with diagnosing brain tumor. But it's very important to know the difference of when you're picking up symptoms or whatever. So as far as if you have multi-animals in the household, it's difficult. If I sometimes have, I've had an experience where I'll wake up in the middle of the night knowing something's wrong in the barn. Now we have 30 animals down there. And I won't necessarily know who it is. And I've gone running in the barn looking, is anybody down thrashing? I can't find anything. And then taking a deep breath, trying to narrow it down, and then I'll find the animal that's having the problem. But it can be difficult, and it comes with practice. How you discern what is coming from a certain animal. We're sitting here in this room full of cats. They're not all on camera, actually. So people watching might go, I've seen 2 or 3, but there are actually, 8 in here, I guess. If one of them if I was starting to get a message, I would have to really focus on who's talking to me if I didn't know. Usually they make themselves known to me as to who is talking. Or I can feel the personality of somebody and I go, I know who that is. But that's practice and time where you get to really get a better focus.
Mm. And so when something is going on with an animal, do they know, or is it the same as humans that obviously we feel symptoms, but we can have something going on and have no idea?
So both is true. They sometimes do know it's something more severe. Like I'll get sometimes information from an animal, and I work with our veterinarian here, our on-site veterinarian all the time. And, but sometimes even my own animals, I'll feel like something's wrong, but we can't find it, and it's like, but I really think something's wrong. And sometimes it's just my worry. And other times, indeed, they have something wrong, but we just haven't found it yet. So it can vary. Some of them have a sense. We specialize in elder care here. So I've had a lot of elderly animals here that'll suddenly give me, a message. I'll give you an example. I had a horse, this was years ago now. I had a horse that I just absolutely adored. And I liked taking her out for walks around the farm, just on the lead rope, So I would take her out, and one day we were going for a walk, and she says to me, I want to go up the hill. And so I said, well, why are we going up the hill? It was just a field, and she wanted to go up top this hill. So she was insistent. So we had never walked up this hill together. So I just said, all right. So we walked up this hill, and she stopped at this one place, and she looked around, and it overlooks the farm, and it's really pretty. And she said to me, I just want you to know that this is where I want to be buried. And I said, oh, Tara, we don't have to be talking about that today. And she just turned her head and looked at me and she said, yes, we do, dear. We need to talk about that today. And you got to promise me this is where I want to be buried. And I said, why would you want to be buried here? Because we had a place where we buried the horses and it wasn't where this was. And I said, this isn't near anything. It's totally away. She said, no, this is where I'll be closest to you. And I want to be here, which the communication made no sense. But she made me promise her. So, I humored her. I promised her. Out of nowhere, the next day, she died. She gave us no indication that there was anything wrong. And all of a sudden, I came out to the barn. She was down in her stall. I had just been out a few minutes before. She was fine, and she must have had like a massive stroke, and she just passed away. And so I was totally dumbfounded, and I felt horrible burying this horse where she asked me to, because it was way away from where any graves were. The irony of the whole story is, fast forward 7 years later, and that's where my partner and I built our house here on the farm, and she's actually, what's now our backyard is where she's buried. So, and the farm expanded, so she's now right where she can see everything going on. And she can't, but her gravesite is right where she told me, this is where I'm going to be closest to you and where I'll see the whole farm. And she was totally right.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Somebody just asked a question about a cat biting and scratching when she's trying to pet them. How do you figure out what's going on? Is it a medical thing? Is it a preference? They don't want to be pet. How do you figure that out?
So that it may not be easy to figure that out, but like I was saying at the beginning, there are just some cats that do not find being petted comfortable. Some of them really have a neurological thing where it triggers them, and I might not be using the right phrase saying neurological, but that it's just, they don't like it. It's like they get overstimulated. I have a cat in my own house. You can pet her twice. If you go one more time, you're going to get bitten and whopped at, because she will just, and she gets us all the time because she's very beautiful and she looks like she's very friendly. She comes up and she rubs up against you. She gives you nice little headbutts and she purrs and purrs and purrs. And if you do pet number 3, she turns into a maniac. I mean, we've been bitten and mauled so many times by her, but that's her preference. And so we haven't found any reason to think there's anything medically wrong. But she just doesn't like it.
Mm.
And she's a long-haired cat. This is interesting. She's a long-haired cat. She's so nasty about being touched that grooming is very difficult. So we actually just had a situation where she had a medical issue. She had to be sedated. And so we actually shaved her because she was starting to get matted. And the older she gets, the crankier she's getting. So we actually had them shave her down. And now she's actually a tad bit friendlier. And part of it is she doesn't like the feel of that being petted on her long hair. On her short hair now, it doesn't feel the same to her. I still don't want to go past 4 and test it out. But anyway.
That's so interesting. The last question we had for today was about, if an animal does have a medical issue, do they have different preferences for treatment like a human would? How do you determine what they want, and what do you do if you disagree?
Yeah, that happens. That happens. Absolutely. We always ask here what treatment the animal does want or will tolerate. So we have a saying here: just because we can, should we? And we really follow that. Now, a lot of people that come to a sanctuary the first time, or they see animals that are terminally ill or on palliative care, or like if they meet our horse Molly, for example. I think this Molly, I'm going to use Molly because I think she's a great example. So Molly's a pony. She's been here for, I think, 15 years now. It's been a long time. When she came here, she was losing her vision due to a disease she had in her eyes. And she was completely without vision. She was probably had 80% vision loss when she came here. So she could see light, dark, she could see movement. But that didn't last for long. But we're talking days and weeks after she arrived. She went completely blind. She is a very high-functioning blind horse. She doesn't spook. You can lead her out to pasture. Once she knows her pasture, she trots around. She rolls. She, follows other horses around. She's amazing. She's very high-functioning. In the winter, we turn her out in our indoor arena. You can have objects in there that she completely will walk around and avoid. It's like she has sonar. I mean, but she's highly adaptive to that. Not all horses would take to that. Not all horses are okay being blind. I had another horse that went blind that absolutely freaked out. And the conversation was for a while whether it was better to euthanize her because she ended up adapting somewhat. But her life was more hampered by it. Whereas with Molly, it's not. Now, Molly, when people come and meet her, we have a problem here because this disease she had in her eyes, even though she couldn't see, the eyes progressively deteriorated and became very painful for her. So a few years ago, we actually had her eyes removed. So she has both eyes removed. Now, when people come and see an eyeless horse here, they think, oh my God, that's barbaric. Why would you do that? But she literally could see no light or dark. So nothing changed for her. But amazingly, when she had her eyes removed, she was like more friendly and more outgoing. And we realized that all this time she's had a certain level of pain with those eyes in there. And now, I mean, like I said, I watched her yesterday, or day before yesterday, trotting around in her paddock, just running and bucking. And, she lives a normal life, even though she has no eyes. She can smell a carrot coming, 50 feet away, I swear. But anyway, she has a really great quality of life, yet people will look at her and feel sorry for her, which she hates. And if she senses somebody doing that, she backs away. She won't let people pet her, but if you see her for who she is, she will come forward. She lets you pet her. And her personality is more that she's more aloof anyway. I mean, but that has nothing to do with not having eyes. That's just her personality. But that's an example. We've had animals that had diseases here that were treatable, that did not want the treatment. So if you have an animal that cannot stand being pilled every day, but there's a pill that you could give them, if you have an animal that's a diabetic, but you cannot give them the injections of insulin every day, you're in a different that's their life decision. You're in a different conversation with them at that point. And then we do have that conversation here. Do you realize if you don't get this, you're going to die? And then they have that option. Have I ever disagreed with one? That's kind of hard to say. There were some I was surprised by. There were some animals that I thought, oh, this is going to be it. That suddenly, because they were more on the timid side or semi-feral side, that I didn't think they were going to want to be handled or treated, that all of a sudden welcomed the treatment. And I was, those have blindsided me sometimes. It's like, wow, here I thought we were up to a euthanasia decision, and they decided, no, I'm still doing something. I want to have that treatment, and we'll go ahead and do it. Vice versa too. If there's an animal that doesn't want to be handled for treatment, we honor that. And so that will mean usually making a euthanasia decision.
Yeah, and that's where we have to, the respect comes in for them as an individual, and us having to kind of put our ego and our own wants aside.
Yeah. And those are difficult.
So interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Dawn.
All right.
I think that's it for today, but if you have other questions, please put them in the comments and we'll talk about them next week. I also see we have a few questions about workshops and consults in the comments that we'll answer in the comments when we get off of here right now.
Great.
Have a great day, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.